Whiskey
Tango
Life Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Whiskey Tango Life Podcast. I am Chris, and I'm here today with my friend Paul from church, and we're going to be talking about, I've been kind of alluding to the fact that I really wanted to, after spending so much time hearing other people's stories of different things and different political situations that they've been through, religious situations and everything, that I've realized that over the years of doing this podcast that I have never really opened up myself and given you a little bit more details on my life. And I have really wanted to share my story of how I came to Christ, how he chased after me, and just some really awesome miracles that have happened in my life. So I thought I would like to do that. I happen to have Paul over for dinner tonight, and I thought, what an awesome opportunity, because Paul's going to be starting up his own podcast. And I thought, what an awesome opportunity just to have him on and actually tell him the stories, have him react to them, get a little bit of maybe questions that he may have, that you may have yourself as you're watching it, and open up a little bit more. So, Paul, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So, why don't you tell me real quick before we get into everything what your podcast is going to be about and what you got going on?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. By the way, this is cool. This is my first time, as you know. I'm Jamaican. I'm a Christian. I'm a Jamaican, and I just see tons of issues going on in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, and as it relates to faith and how the music and just the culture influences how people react to Christianity. So I'm into apologetics. So I want to be able to use this podcast, hopefully, to be able to answer some questions that some people might have in regards to faith and Christianity in the context of the Caribbean. So my podcast will be called so I coined the word, instead of Caribbean, it's Caribbean, which, if you know anything about who the Bereans were in the Bible, Acts 17:11, it says that the Bereans, while Paul came to preach in this place called Berea, the Bereans kept searching the scriptures to see if what Paul was talking about was true. So I consider myself a Berean, somebody who looks at the world, looks at what's going on in the world, and searches the scriptures to see if what's going on makes sense. So I'll do that in my podcast in the context of the Caribbean.
But you do other things as well that are kind of faith related too. So if you want to lead people to that, please tell them.
I'm also a musician. I do reggae, gospel, dancehall, gospel, if you want to call it that. So I'm super Jamaican. I have this beautiful English American accent right now.
But you let loose.
But I let loose. I'm Jamaican, you know what I'm saying? So I make music and I make poetry. And so you can find me at Yannick Paul, there's underscore, that's YANNICK, Paul, PAUL underscore, on Instagram. That's what I mostly use. So
awesome.
Find me there. Yeah.
All right. So we'll link to that in the description. So if you're interested in that, certainly look in the description. I'll link to it there. So kind of what I wanted to do is I want to go over some of the kind of neat things that happen in my life. Mm-hmm. I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but based on our conversations that we had upstairs.
Go ahead,
but basically,
bro.
your past on things that you struggled with is things I struggled with too, but in an opposite way. You were a ladies' man. I was chasing the ladies; they weren't having it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say that my first stories is in regards to how God kind of chased me. You know, I didn't grow up going to church. I didn't become a Christian until I guess you could say I was dating my wife now, Leslie. But when you're in the context of something, when something's happening, when you're living in the present and something's happening, you don't see it until you are years later, or sometimes it's right away, but you don't really see it until things have happened, right? And so I realized that my weakness is something that God was trying to use to chase after me, right? So what happened was back when I was in high school. I'm not going to use their real names.
Okay.
I think I will actually send this to one of them because she's a super nice girl, right? But there were these two girls that were a year older than me that were, in my mind, untouchable. Like gorgeous girls in high school, and they were like, I mean, they were best friends too. And we'll just say K and A. Yeah. Okay. And so I was a year younger, and I remember I was working at Red Robin as a busboy, and the movie theater was right next door. And these two would come in all the time from seeing movies and get food, and they would know me just from that. And they knew that we went to school together, but like it was just a passing by type. Hey Chris, how's it going? You know, hey girls, how's the movie that you saw? Whatever, easy stuff. You know, no relationship whatsoever.
Wow.
You know. So one day I'm in school, and I'm hanging out in my locker, and Kay walks up to me out of nowhere, right? And she's like, "Hey, Chris, I'm having a party at my house this weekend. Are you interested in coming?" I'm like, you know, I'm like, holy crap. So I'm like, yeah, well, you know, I gotta check my schedule, see what's going on, and, you know. so she's like, okay, well, you know, here's the information and everything. I'm like, okay, all right, thanks. So she leaves, and I immediately like bolt to my best friend, Brandon, right? I'm like, Brandon, Kay just asked me over to her house for a party. He's like, what's that all about? I'm like, I don't know. What the heck is all about, you know? So I'm like, well, he's like, you gotta go. I'm like, yeah, I definitely gotta go, you know? So I go over that weekend. I think it was a weekend. I don't even know at this point. I think I was either a sophomore or a junior in high school. Okay. And I go over there. All these kids are outside playing volleyball and doing all these different things and everything. I'm like, all right, this is cool, you know, whatever. And then she's like, all right, everybody, we're going to go up to the barn. Well, in my mind, I'm like, oh, snap. This is like spin the bottle time. Like, this is going down. You know what I mean? So... So I'm following people up into this barn. It's very nice. It's finished off it's like carpeted and everything. It's super nice, really well done. And as I'm following people in, they're all walking into this room and then spinning 180 around and sitting down on the ground and facing the door that we're coming through, right? I'm like, okay, this is a little weird, but all right. So I was uncomfortable. I didn't really know these people too well anyway. I went behind everyone. I sat down, faced that way. And all of a sudden, this guy comes in with a guitar, sits down, starts singing like Kumbaya, literally. I'm like, I just got tricked into a youth group.
Wow.
So I think God knew at the time, like, I got to use some girls to get these guys into church, you know? But the thing is, I was so bitter for so long. I was like, I can't believe I got tricked into this. You know what I mean? So I always thought that was really funny, that he knew to use girls to get to me, you know?
Yeah.
So I see that now, of course. Wow. But so then a couple years later, this is what was really interesting. About the time that I started dating Leslie, I was actually dating Leslie at the time. I kept on coming to her with questions when we were in college. Leslie. Yeah, her thing, and I completely agree with this now, is if I wanted to date her at the time, I had to go to church with her. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, well, I believe in God. You know, I just don't know what to do with it. Yeah. You know, I always believed in God. Which is a little sad for me because I think a lot of people have their coming to Christ moment that they know, and I don't. I think I always believed in God. I just don't have that moment.
So even before you went to that party,
I believed in God.
Okay.
I kind of feel like there's so much bigger things going on, you know. But when I started dating Leslie, you know, I was challenging her. Like, I'm like, I believe in God, but you gotta, you know, help me out with this. You know,
and this was college, right?
College. Yep. Okay. So she would have been a junior at the time, or a senior, junior or senior. But I had all these questions for her, and she was like, "Listen, I appreciate all these questions. I'm going to do what I can." She bought me a Bible, and I still have it. And in the front of it, it says, I hope you find all the answers that you're looking for in this, you know. But she would specifically spend a lot of time looking through the Bible for questions that I had. Things like, you know, I loved playing poker, you know, and just gambling. Not like, I never gambled for an income, but I like playing poker, you know, and I like a little bit of money into it, you know. So I was about that, and there were other questions I had.
So you wanted to know if that was a sin or like what?
Because that, you know, and here's another thing too about that. Her friends at church were saying, you know, it's easier to pull someone off a chair than to pull someone up onto a chair. So they were telling her not to date me because it would have been easier for me to pull her out of Christianity than for her to pull me into Christianity. You know, so I was like, okay, you know, I now I gotta see when you say stuff like that to me. Now it's a challenge. All right, so now I'm going to prove you wrong. So that's where that was. But I had all these questions, and she tried her best for it. So it happens that one day I'm at a bookstore, right, and I'm with a friend, and we're going to see a movie. And I looked at my watch and I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to be late for the movie. So we were in the back of the bookstore and we started darting out of the bookstore, right? I took the path of least resistance. And I stopped dead in my tracks in the one aisle because of a book that was on the shelf. And it had the cover of it looked like a Vegas, right? There was a Vegas sign on it and it said, Searching for God Knows What. Okay, that's the title of the book. I'm like, holy crap! I knew I was going to be late, but I had to turn this thing around. On the back was literally, I think there were like 7 questions on the back, 5 of which were questions I was asking.
That you were
Leslie.
asking.
Yeah. Picked up the book, bought it, read it later. Someone borrowed it. I lost it. No one knows where it went. A couple years later go by, and I find it again in a bargain bin for $1. Picked it up again, highlighted the crap out of it on all these things that I was talking about. Lended it out again. I don't think I have it anymore. I don't know where it is. Hopefully I've blessed 2 people at this point. You know what I mean? At least.
So was it a Christian book or what? It was a Christian book.
Yeah, it was basically saying, like, you know, pointing towards the Bible for all the questions I had. You know, it was really, really interesting. So these are all, you don't really realize, I think, until you're out of those moments when God is like, they say that Jesus is at the door. He's knocking. You just need to answer. Yeah. And
have you seen those pictures of just you know the Jesus just like
what you want? But I think it's true. I think that there's opportunities that are set out before us that you don't realize until you realize. You know what I mean? Like where things are. So that was very telling for me, I think, when I look back on it. But miracles really start to happen when I would say in 2000. I'm going to try to water down the story as much as possible. But basically, in 2009, I started going to the gym for the first time. And I couldn't run from one side of the room to the other without running out of breath. And started on a treadmill. By the end of the first month, I was running 6 miles without stopping. I felt awesome, but I wasn't losing the weight that I wanted to lose. And all my friends were like, you need to work out muscles, like lifting and everything. I was like, okay. So I started doing that, and all of a sudden my shoulders started to hurt, you know? And I was explaining it to people, and people were like, yeah, it sounds like you tore your rotator cuff up there. I was like, okay. At the same time, I started getting earaches, stomach aches, and all this stuff. And I went to this country doctor out in the area that I grew up in, and I'm like, I have earaches. I have, like, I think I tore my rotator cuff because I just started working out. I have a stomach bug or something's going on. I'm really having trouble. Like when I eat 1 forkful and I'm full, and I can't eat anymore. I'm like, you know. And she's like, yeah, it sounds like you got hit by a crap storm. Not that word though, but you know. So I was like, yeah, I mean, like that's the best way of putting it. So they gave me a Z-Pack. A couple weeks go by, and things are only getting worse. And at this point now, it hurts to let my arm hang. So I walk around holding my arm, you know. And I'm like, whatever you did didn't work. I need something else. They gave me another Z-Pack. Okay, so at this point I've been misdiagnosed for 2 months. Okay. My dad came down in August of that year and saw me sitting on a couch, and we were living in a farmhouse. It was over 90 degrees out. We didn't have air conditioning. All the windows were open, and I'm sitting there with a heavy blanket over me, shivering. In 90 degree heat. And my dad's like, what the hell's going on with you? What's wrong? And I was like, I don't know. I'm freezing. He's like, how long has this been going on? I'm like, I don't know. I've been sick for like 2 months now. And I wake up at night. If I'm not shivering during the day, I wake up at night flipping my pillow over because I'm waking up in pools of sweat, like literal, like depth of sweat, you know? And he's like, wow, I got to get you in to see my doctor. And the doctor that, at internal medicine doctor, said, well, we usually have a 6-month wait, but it sounds like something serious is going on, so let's get him in here. I went in, and without even touching me, this guy said, listening to my symptoms, I'm about 90% sure you have lymphoma, cancer, I was like, okay, so what's the next step? And he said, we're going to send you for a biopsy on Friday and figure out what's going on. So Friday came, did the biopsy. Saturday night that weekend, we're going to bed. My oldest daughter at the time was 6 months old. And I said to my wife, I'm having a little trouble breathing, She's like, well, do you want to go to the hospital? And I said, well, I think if we did that, my parents would have to come down, watch Alex. We'd have to get dressed. We'd have to go. It's just a hassle. Let's not do that. I said, I'll tell you what, if I'm not feeling well in the morning, we'll pack it up. We'll go to the hospital, right? Next morning, I woke up. I sat straight up and I said, I can't breathe. We need to go to the hospital. Go to the hospital, and I went through a strenuous day of tests. X-rays, EKG, ultrasound, blood work, and just the whole 9 yards, CAT scan. What was happening to me was anytime I was sitting straight up or standing, I could breathe. But anytime I would recline even a little bit, I couldn't breathe.
Wow. That must have been uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. yeah. So.
And scary.
Yeah, and we couldn't figure it out. I mean, every test we were doing, we couldn't figure it out,
But the doctor already told you that it was lymphoma,
he basically said he assumed that, but the biopsy test hadn't been back yet.
Okay. Yeah.
So so I'm being wheeled down the hall, coming back after hours of tests. And at the end of the hall is my best friend, Brandon, right? And he's sitting there with a big smile on his face. I'm smiling. I'm like thinking to myself, all I want to do is hang out with my best friend right now, And we get about 10 feet from him, and this nurse rushes up. We just got him cleared for the PET scan. We need to bring him back downstairs. As a grown man, I was crying. I mean, I was so upset. I was like, I just want to talk. Can I talk to Brandon for a little bit? And they're like, no, we got to get you down now. So we get down for the PET scan. And just as kind of like a little funny side note story on this, when they bring you in for a PET scan, okay, the nurse will come in with a full lead vest, face mask, and a metal box. And they set this down in front of you, open it up, it's lead lined, and there's a vial in there of poison.
Oh gosh.
That they inject into you, okay? And I'm like sitting there, do I get any protection?
Yeah.
Are you going to inject this stuff right into my veins, So I'm like laughing, I'm like, this is ridiculous. So they do all that, I go into the PET scan, and this nurse is trying to lay me down, and it's the same thing. I mean, I literally feel like an elephant is sitting on my chest, And I started to lay down, and I had to pull myself back up. I kept 3 times I grabbed her by the shirt and pulled myself back up. I'm like, lady, I cannot lay down, or I can't breathe if I lay down, She's like, Mr. Ford, you have to lay down, because if you don't, we're not going to know why you can't breathe.
Yeah.
Right. So I laid down, and I immediately just started praying out loud. I think that's an important part of this story, was not just the praying, because I could have prayed to myself, you know what I mean? But I was praying out loud. And this is going to come into play in another story I have too. But I was like, Jesus, please help me breathe. I can't breathe right now. I need you. Only you can help me breathe, right? And the only way I can describe what happened to me at that moment was like if I was standing up and someone came up behind me with a heated blanket and wrapped it around me and held me. And I breathed completely fine for the 30 or whatever minutes I was in there. And the second that table started coming out, I had to pull myself out because I couldn't breathe again. So here's what was happening.
You felt a difference.
I felt like someone was embracing me, and I could breathe. Like literally someone hugging me from behind, Here's what was happening though. And I think this is also really important. The cancer was causing fluid to fill up in my lungs. It was also filling up in the sac around my heart, so it was crushing my heart inside the sac. So what was happening was, as I was laying back, the fluid would rush up and cut off my airways. So I was literally drowning in myself, okay? So I remember telling this to an atheist friend of mine, because I couldn't tell this story for months without crying.
Hold on though. So you went from believing in God, but meeting Leslie, but wasn't really a Christian, and then cancer. Like, were you calling yourself a Christian during this time? Like, where were you? Where were you in your faith at this time? You prayed to Jesus. What happened?
Yeah. No, you know what the questions was trying to figure out the rules of the game. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. Okay, if I'm a Christian, what are the rules of this game? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Okay. Like, what can I get away with? Okay. You know, that's the easiest way of putting it. You know, like, what's a sin, what's not a sin, and why are things okay and not okay? You know, I couldn't tell the story for about 2 months without like just welling up and crying because the experience was so powerful. Actually, before I go into what I said to my friend, I got up to my room, and as soon as I got up there, I said to Leslie, I want to tell you something. If it's my time to go with all this, I'm okay with it. Yeah. I know that God is there now. Yeah. I've had an unshakable faith since then because I know what's going to happen. You know, since then I have a job where I work on roofs and I'm high up, and sometimes it's really scary, but I'm not afraid of falling. Yeah. I've swam with sharks. You know, I'm like, hey, either God's protecting me or he's going to I'm going to have a cool way of dying and going out of this world. You know what I mean? So I live life without fear now. Yeah. And that has opened up a lot of doors too, which is really cool. But I know God is there. The atheist friend I told this story to, and I get through this whole thing, and I tell him, like, I prayed for 30 minutes and he saved me. He was able to help me breathe. And he goes, wow, meditation is a powerful thing. And I was like, buddy, if I held your head underwater for 40 minutes, would you be able to meditate your way out of that? Because I was literally drowning in myself. Like, it was fluid filling up my lungs. I couldn't breathe, you know? And I hope I didn't mean to sound like a jerk in that sense, but I need him to think about the facts. You know what I mean? And I've had nurse friends, doctor friends since then tell me, like, yeah, I don't know. I can't explain that. Because if you were laying down, the fluid would have come up and would have cut off your airways. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So I think that's really interesting.
That's super cool, bro. Like, that's a crazy story, and I'm just like, man, like, you know, I hear stories of people who've experienced, like, you know, medical issues, and you know, your atheist friend, you know, I've heard stories where atheists, they're like, you know, if I die or if I'm medically, you know, hospitalized or something, I'm still not going to come to Christ, right? And they mock Christians who share stories like that, you know, as if it was some kind of fear or something like that. But even if it was, whatever, you know, you felt something, and, you know, God comes into those moments and saves people. God saves who he wants to save, man. And I believe in what you experienced, you know. You know, so you know, don't worry. But I hope he's still not an atheist. I don't know. Do you think?
No, he definitely is.
He is. Yeah. But your story for whoever, you know, whoever ears it falls on, will change lives.
I hope so. I try to talk to people with cancer and try to push them through. Like, you know, I do believe that that it's about 80% faith, about 20% positive attitude. Yeah. What was I? 80 and 20?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And maybe a little medical stuff in there too. Yeah. You know what I mean? But even then, like, I would do things differently. I probably wouldn't go through chemo today. I would probably do intravenous vitamin C, stuff like that. Do some sort of regimen or something that's not poisoning my body. But so the one of the points to that was the praying out loud and doing that. We have some good family friends that they go to a church where they believe in prayer to power, power to prayer, or whatever it is, where you speak it into existence, you know. And this is kind of just a little story, but I thought it was really funny. I am terrible at taking tests. Okay. Like, I can study my butt off for anything. I could know it inside and out. I could sit here with you, study something, and just be like shooting back and forth with questions and answering everything. I'll get it all right. If I take a test, I'll fail it. You know what I mean? It's just terrible. It's always been that way in school. Well, I was going for a contractor's license down in Maryland, and it was a tough test. Like, I studied my rear end off of this thing, highlighting the book, going through it and everything. I'm like, this is going to be so hard.
Yeah.
I don't think I could do this. And got down to the test center in Maryland, and I'm sitting in my car. I'm looking at the door. I'm thinking to myself, why? I just drove 4 hours to get down here. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to fail this thing.
Oh, man.
You know? And I just spent all this time, and it's going to be such a waste of time. I'm like, the only one that can help me is God.
Is God,
you know?
yeah.
So I sat in my car, and I was just like, God, only you, only through you right now can I pass this test. And I want to smash this test right now.
Yeah.
Please help me smash this test, because only you can make that possible. I know where my strength is, and I know that you're the one that can do this, right? So I do I'm praying, go inside, I sit down, I'm taking the test. I don't know if you've taken like a lot of electronic tests and like test center stuff.
Yes,
but like,
I have.
you know how you can check them off to like come back to them too and check them?
Yeah.
So I had about 10 of those, right? And I'm looking at the end of this test at those 10 answers, and I'm going back and forth on different things. And finally, I'm like, you know what? I'm at the end of my rope here.
Yeah.
I don't know if I know these things or not. And I just hit submit, right? And the screen goes blank. I'm like, okay. It's not telling me anything here.
It's not telling you if you passed or failed or anything.
I'm waiting for it to load up.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is going on here? So I get confused, and I look over at the proctor guy behind the glass window, and he's like, he's like, come on. Yeah. I was like, okay. So I walk out to him, and he's like, oh, this is really crazy. I was like, what's going on? He's like, okay, so look at the screen here. You see the answers over here, like how many questions there are on the test? I said, yeah. He's like, you see that blank space right there? I said, yeah. He's like, usually there's numbers there. That's how many questions you've got wrong. He's like, you scored 100% on this test.
What?
And he's like, and I've only seen that like 5 times.
Wow.
I'm like, what?
Whoa. Wow.
I mean, there's no way, man. There's no way. I'm terrible at tests, and I was like sweating on those last answers. You know what I mean?
That's amazing, bro. Wow.
I truly believe, like, you know, to add to anything, like, I really believe the power of prayer, you know, speaking it into, like, hey, you know, we were just, what was it? I think we were reading in, I don't know if we're in Matthew right now or something like that. I forget where we're at in the Bible. I'm reading with the kids right now, but it was talking about prayer. And it was talking about how your prayer should always be for the glory of the kingdom.
Of course.
You know? And I think,
yeah.
and we see that.
Yeah.
And I think I inherently knew that. But at the same time, you're praying for reasons. You know what I mean?
Because you want stuff too.
You want stuff.
You want stuff too.
But it's not a genie in a bottle type
It's
of
not
situation.
exactly,
you know, and that's
yeah.
why I think like the kids, like their daily prayer is, I want to have a good day tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, why?
Yeah.
You know, like what's the purpose for God? You know, and so it was going over that, and it was talking about how, like, when you pray, just pray out of the determination that God's going to make it happen for you. If it's for His glory, if it's the whole moving a mountain or throwing them, telling the mountain to jump into the sea.
Yeah.
You know. And I truly, like, if I have one piece of advice on how to pray, like, those are 2 instances where I did that, and I was like, holy crap.
Well,
this is
I get that. I get that completely. And I believe that too. I agree. I agree with praying. I mean, because the Bible tells you to ask, ask, and you shall receive.
Yep.
You know, God. You know, your Father who is evil wouldn't give you a snake. You know, your Heavenly Father will give you much better. You know, so of course praying. The only thing, so on my personal experience with that. Is so before I came to Christ, I read this book called The Secret. I'm not sure if you know about that book.
I know about it.
And it's a lot of kind of speak it into existence thing, you know. And I remember specifically in that book, it was like, you know, like praying for a car or something. And I remember I was in art school, and I was like, I needed like a new pack of pencils, right? I needed a new pack of pencils. And I was like, I'm going to pray for this new pack of pencils. And like, it didn't happen, you know? So I was just like, you know, this stuff is stupid, you know? So
where was the connection to God? Why would that glorify
there was no connection to God. There was no
exactly.
connection to God. So, you know, while I believe in praying, and of course, because my wife is like, she's like kind of like you, just pray for it, and where I'm just like, man, I'll just wait and see what happens instead of praying, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to be careful because there is kind of like this thing where you just pray for a new car and you'll get a new car. That's kind of like where I'm just like, I'll draw the line a little bit.
That's like
I don't know if that's your thinking.
No. That's that to us is like the prosperity Bible type stuff.
Yeah.
We are adamantly against Joel Osteen type stuff.
That's another podcast.
Like it was, we've had, there's so many stories I could tell. I told you over dinner the story of me putting together the video for the Blaze and trying to make that go viral. Mm-hmm. The fact that the president of the company contacted me off of that, and that was, I truly feel a miracle. It wasn't my industry to be in. So I've been doing this podcast now for 6 years, and I always, now this wasn't praying out loud. This was an interesting one. This has been a wild ride over the last year. I have for about 3 years now thought to myself, you know what? Our society is decaying so badly with Hollywood and where it's been leading us. And that kind of wags the tail of culture, And I keep on thinking to myself, the whole Me Too movement exposed a lot of things for, like, they wanted it to go after Trump, but it backfired on themselves because there's so many dirtbags in Hollywood and everything. And I thought to myself, why can't there's a group of actors and or producers, like all these people in Hollywood, that are conservative, that are underground with it, in a group called Friends of Abe. It's a group, it's a Hollywood group, right? But you don't know who's in it because they keep it secret because they know that they would be blacklisted in Hollywood, right? Mm-hmm. So I always thought to myself, man, it would be awesome if they could start up something in Texas, like a new Hollywood, or just get out of there.
Why Texas, if you don't mind me asking?
Freedom. I think that, and here's the thing though, not to exclude liberals. Like, I would love to see a new Hollywood where they're like, hey, we appreciate you no matter what. And we want to show you the light of that. We'll take anyone as long as you're talented and use you no matter what you believe. Like, we felt like we shouldn't be hiding over there. So now we're not hiding over here. We don't expect you to hide either, but this is the way it should be. But we couldn't do it over there. That type of thing. And for, I would say, about 3 years now, with doing this, and I have a small audience, I know that, and I get some liberals that bash me for only having a couple views on the videos and stuff like that. Whatever. I've had people reach out to me that have said that certain topics have changed their life in the way that they view things. And you know what? If I change one or two people with some of the videos I do, that makes me happy. I don't need to be changing the world, But for 3 years now, I've been thinking to myself privately, without even telling my wife, I would love to somehow get into conservative Christian Hollywood, And I just kept on thinking that, like, what could I do? What way would there be? So last summer, I get introduced to this woman, Brooke, and we were talking about politics and stuff. She's in the Easton area in Pennsylvania. She gets involved in the Republican Party stuff, and we just kept in touch, talking about politics and things. And in December, she reached out to me, and she saw that my mom had passed away, and she reached out just to see how things were going. And I was telling her it was a little rough, And then she ended the conversation with, hey, I'm going to be on a Hollywood Zoom conference call tomorrow night. Would you be interested in sitting in on it and seeing if you could help out in any kind of way? I was like, yeah, sure. She didn't even tell me what it was about, So I tune into this Zoom meeting, and I think Beth, the executive producer, would laugh at this because I tuned in. As soon as I logged in, Beth goes, Chris Ford, who are you and what are you doing in here? I was like, Brooke invited me.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
wanted me to sit quietly and see if there's anything I could help out with.
Yeah.
I don't even know what you guys are doing. I'm just going to sit back and be quiet. And she's like, okay, all right, well, just, she's like, we're going to get started with the meeting
Yeah.
here. They started it in prayer.
Okay.
I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. So then they start talking, and I'm on mute, right? And they're talking about the Pilgrims. And for me, I'm a history buff. I love this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there was a documentary movie type put together by Kirk Cameron a couple of years ago
Yeah, I love
called
that guy.
Monumental.
Love that guy.
Yeah, did you ever see Monumental?
I haven't, no.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's so amazing about the Pilgrims. And they're talking about the Pilgrims. I'm like, holy crap! Am I getting roped into a Pilgrim project? And they're like, Chris Ford, we're kind of done talking about what we want to talk about. What are your thoughts on this? I came off of mute. I was like, okay, I don't want to act too crazy here and like excited, but I love the Pilgrims, and I will help you in whatever way I can.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And they just start laughing. They're like, okay, like, what can you bring to the table? I'm like, I run a podcast. What if we do a behind the scenes podcast? I'll run the behind the scenes podcast for the whole thing, you know, and we'll have like a behind the scenes show or something. I'm like, that's a really cool idea. So they're on board with that. So I get off the phone and I call up Leslie, my wife. I'm like, you're not going to believe what I just got roped into. and I told her, I was like, I've been praying to myself for this kind of thing for a couple of years now. I never even told you, you know? And who am I to get roped into this?
Yeah.
I'm a nobody, you know?
Yeah.
And you could take that, liberals, as a sound. Yeah, I know I'm a nobody. So,
But I mean, to say, you know what, just to even add on that, bro, you know, 'cause we're always being, you know, we're the underdogs. You know, Christians are underdogs. Even when we're the most famous and popular, we're still the underdogs.
Yep, that's
so
true.
you know, you can't even really look at views or look at, you know, of course we want the views, we want people to listen, but you know, that doesn't mean we're less than. You know, some of the most influential people aren't as popular as, like, I don't know, Jay-Z or something. You know, like just say a name. You know,
TikTok takes over nowadays.
Yeah,
you know?
man. Yeah,
It's
so
crazy.
man, forget about that. Man. But yeah, go ahead.
So this is going on, and I remember there was a day that came within a month or two after that the executive producer reached out to me on a weekend. And I was building dressers that we got from IKEA for both the youngest two, right? And I spent me all day putting these things together because IKEA, of course, it's like 2 million pieces per thing. So I'm on the floor, I'm doing this stuff. I get a text from the executive producer. Hey, Chris, I feel terrible about this, but I remember you saying that you do a podcast, and I feel terrible, but I've never even watched your stuff, right? Oh, let me take a step back. I messed this up. So a couple days before this, I'm hanging out with my buddy, and he goes, what do you expect to come from this? I said, he's like, do you want to like act in Christian stuff? I said, listen, I don't know if I can act. I think that would be awesome. I certainly have my ideas of what kind of movies I would love to be in if I could act, you know, but I don't know. I said, to be honest with you, I know it sounds really crazy. I would rather be behind the camera doing narration. I want my voice. I said I would love to.
Great voice, by the way.
Yeah, I would love to narrate something, or even better. And this sounds completely off the wall crazy. I would love to go take my kids to a Pixar or Disney movie, and my voice be one of the characters.
Yeah, it's your voice, yeah.
And he's like, that's really cool. I like that. You know, and so that was a conversation on Thursday. Okay, no lie. This is how fast this happened. Friday, she reaches out to me. No, Friday, I'm sorry. Friday night, I told Leslie about that conversation, and she laughed at me. You see a trend because I told you about the other one that she laughed at too. So Saturday, she takes off. She goes grocery shopping. I'm sitting at home. I get this text. I haven't seen your podcast from the executive producer. I want to take a look at it. I said, well, here's a couple of my favorite ones, links to those on YouTube that you can check out. I go back to building the dresser. I get a text. Chris, I need you as a narrator on this project. I'm like, what? You know, I'm like, this is insane. Like I literally within the last 2 days was talking about how I want to narrate things, you know. And I'm like, I'm looking up.
Yeah.
Honestly, man, I welled
praising
up.
God.
I was
You're praising
crying.
God, yeah.
I was crying,
Yeah.
like not like sobbing, but
Yeah.
I had tears in my eyes. Leslie came home. I was like, "You're not gonna believe this." I just started tearing up, and she's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Nothing's wrong. Like God is working in my
God is
life right
working.
now."
Yeah, God is working.
And so it gets even crazier. Now this isn't something that's happened yet, but I'm hoping.
Well, you're hoping.
So, within the last couple months, I was thinking to myself, you know, I do a lot of driving for work and everything, and I was thinking to myself, man, you know what? If God's really been working in my life, He's been really putting things into place. If I were to get into Christian conservative movies, what would I want to do? And I just thought, man, the coolest damn movies are Westerns. I would love to
love
be.
Westerns.
I would love to be a cowboy in a movie, even if it's just someone in the background riding a horse as part of the posse. You know what I mean? I don't care. Just give me. I don't care if you put me as like that green visor poker like guy like dealing out the cards in a cowboy movie or something. Make me the bartender. I don't care. I want to be in a cowboy
The guy who
movie.
gets punched. Yeah, there's always a fight. There's always a fight.
So we're talking about this, and the executive producer within that week, again, this is the craziest thing.
Wow.
She goes, all right, so I want to give you an update on what's going on with the scheduling and everything. We're going to be going down to Florida at some point to shoot some of the stuff in the studio down there. But it's going to be an extremely tight schedule. Kevin Sorbo's involved in this project, who played Hercules back in the 90s and everything. Kevin Sorbo's involved. He will probably only be able to get him for an afternoon because he's working on this big project. It's going to be he's trying to get all the conservative actors in Hollywood that have been blacklisted and everything. He's making this big Western movie. I'm like, you got to be effing kidding me right now. Are you serious? And I'm like, Beth, this is what just happened. I told her, I was like, you gotta get me in this Western movie.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't
at this
even care.
point, you must have been like God,
Like,
what are you doing? Like, what are you doing, God? Like, yeah.
I mean, that is just insane. Like, two things are too specific with this. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff just blows my mind all the time. You know, and I seriously, you know, I love the fact that I'm involved in this project, that this miniseries and everything, but it could fall apart.
Yeah.
It could completely fall apart, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Because just the opportunities I've had so far to connect with people and realize that I can make something happen has just been so cool.
I mean, that's the beauty of life, I think. You know, like, we're all kind of on this journey. And, you know, for me, I look at even just sitting here, you know, this could probably go nowhere. Or, you know, you know, people
with
probably
me, it probably will.
Yeah. But what I mean is, you know, this doesn't have to be, you know, I would hope that this video would be the video that cracks the internet somehow, but it doesn't have to be. But I'm looking at this.
One person, that's all
I'm
I
just
care.
looking at this and I'm just like, this is awesome. This is great. I'm blessed to be here. You know, whatever happens, happens. And that's kind of how life is, you know.
Yep.
Even if, like you say, things fall through the cracks or whatever, it's still just an opportunity of progress, you know, and you're just learning new things, and it's building you, you know, into the man that you are today, you know, and that's just beautiful in and of itself, you know.
It's the whole potter and the clay, man.
Yeah.
You know, I can only hope that God's molding me the way that He wants me to be.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And then I'm not messing that up. Like I'm not spinning that wheel too fast or something for, you know, the ghost scene. Demi Moore, like you know, flopping stuff all over the clay all over.
Yeah.
You know? But I got one more pretty amazing story in regards to my faith, and I took a real risk with something this past year. I have unfortunately been known in my family for being the eulogy writer and presenter. You were commenting on my grandfather's planes here and everything, and his was the first eulogy that I wrote, and it went really well. It was really nice. I wrote my grandmother's, who was really close to me and helped raise me and everything. I just kind of got, you know, if someone's gonna pass away, you come to me, I guess, you know. And it sucks. I said in the last eulogy I presented, I was like, you know, the worst part about like being good at writing eulogies is you're going to have to write them for the people that you care about most, and that's a tough thing. That's a tough pill to swallow, you know. The year after I got cancer was the first year that my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it came back 2 more times. And this past year, it got to her in December, and unfortunately she passed away. But what happened was, I don't know where my dad stands.
Yeah.
And my nightly prayer and my kids' nightly prayer is that Jesus works on him.
Yeah.
My prayer at this point is just for God to use the tongue in my mouth to say the things that need to reach him.
Yeah.
You know? And my mom loved the pastors that were in my life and loved listening to them and everything. She would go to church. She talked to her best friends about the Bible. They would talk about things all the time. And when we brought her home for hospice, she had 1 good night left in her. And my dad wanted to make sure that the 2 pastors, one's my buddy, the other one's our pastor that was at our old church that she really liked, that they were there that night for her, you know. And maybe it's that whole
So you guys knew that
she was home for hospice. Yeah. She was on her way out.
Yeah.
And so she was in and out of consciousness. Her eyes were closed most of the time. And they were talking to her and saying, we're here for you. We love you, Joanne, and everything. And my pastor said, okay, before we leave Joanne, this whole time her eyes are closed. Yeah. The only way to heaven is through Christ the Son, and it's a very narrow path. You just need to know him, have a relationship with him. Do you accept Jesus as your Savior? And she opened her eyes and she said, oh yeah, and I'm going to see him soon. And it was very powerful for everyone in the room. And 2 weeks later, my buddy, who's the other pastor there, called me, or I called him. I called him to say happy birthday. I was like, hey, Jimmy, I just wanted to say happy birthday. He's like, oh man, I'm so glad that you called. He's like, was so blessed to be there with your mom that night. He's like, I can't stop thinking about her profession of faith that night on like as she was laying there. He's like, it worked on me. Yeah. Like he was saying, he was choking up on the phone. I was like, yeah. But of course, all this stuff happened during COVID, so we couldn't have a proper funeral or anything for her. So we had a celebration of life, which is what it couldn't have happened better. I wish that people could see what we did for her and have every funeral that way, right? Yeah. Because what a depressing thing, these funerals. You know what I mean? Like, especially like we were talking about, the hardest thing is to see someone go that doesn't know Christ. Yep. And you're just like, I don't got anything good to say then. You know, I mean, like, they could have been a great person, but I'm not going to see them again. Yeah. Like really not going to see them again at this point. Yeah. So we decided for her, she was a party person. I got my personality, my sense of humor, everything from her. She was full of life. That we were going to have a celebration of life for her. Well, of course, I had to do the eulogy again. Yeah. And I sat in my hotel room and I was trying to put something together. And I broke down her life into her raising me, her crazy life in school, some of the shenanigans we got into, her with her friends, her as a crafter. She did stained glass stuff and everything. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a chance here. I'm going to talk about her as a Christian and really break it down for people. And when I say break it down, I am talking about like going into detail, saying things like, you know what drives me crazy is when people say that heaven gained another angel. Yeah. Because I said angels have 4 wings with the head of a beast, the heads of like an ox, a lion, a man, and something else, an eagle. They're not as beautiful as they would be terrifying if you saw them in person. You know, and I'm sure if you're in heaven, they're probably just glorious. You know, but they are we are not. We do not turn into angels. You know, and I'm like that stuff drives me crazy. And I talked about how people believe that just because you're good, you're going to heaven. And I broke down Christianity for people. I was like, my mom knew Christ, and I wasn't going to, but I did give my wife a heads up on what was coming.
What's going to come? Mm-hmm.
We had about 100 people there. And I ended it by saying, I, as a Christian, have been uncomfortable in church singing in church. I just, as a guy, I know I don't have a great voice. I sing a little lower, I let it go, you know what I mean? And it took a lot for me to even open my mouth. But then, like now I sing and I'm more open with it. I still feel a tinge of embarrassment or whatever. But I said, it can be tough.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to ask for everyone to do is, if you know Christ or you want to know Christ, when I'm done talking here, I want you to come up here and we'll all join together, and I will have Pastor Jimmy pray a prayer blessing over us all.
Wow.
And I basically gave a story during the whole thing when I was younger. We were at Red Robin. Okay.
You love Red Robin, huh?
Yeah, right. And we were there.
It's the fries.
It's that seasoning, man.
Yeah.
But it was my dad and myself and my mom and I think my younger sister, right? And the Red Robin mascot was walking up and down talking to the kids and stuff like that. And we're sitting there, and I took a creamer in my hand, a creamer packet, and I said, should I throw this at the Red Robin's head when it goes by? And my mom's like, yes, do it, right? She was egging me on, like this is the type of person she was. She was hilarious. And my dad looks at me, he goes, if you do that, I'm walking out of here, and I'm going to be so pissed off.
Oh, gosh.
So this Red Robin kept on walking by, and it was like he was taunting me, man, So he walks by the one time, and I just took this creamer.
You threw it.
Like I heard it go, right? And it hits this mascot's head with this thump of like emptiness, and this thing spins around. He's looking around for what's going on, and we're sitting there like laughing. As soon as he walked off, my dad got up and left the restaurant.
Man.
He was so mad, but my mom was cracking up, right?
Yeah.
So I said, I'm done, but I'm telling you right now, if you want to profess Jesus like my mom did, I can tell you right now that if she was here, like in Red Robin, she would say, yes, do it. That was my finishing line.
That was perfect. That was beautiful.
And I stood there for a second and no one got up. I was like, oh my gosh. I took a big risk here. I bombed. So all of a sudden, a couple people start getting up.
Wow.
Right? Just a couple. And then everybody started getting up. And I would say out of the 100 people, about 90 people came up.
Wow.
It was insane. It was powerful. Wow. And I had people come up afterwards. I'm not trying to like lift up anything about myself. You know what I mean?
No, I get you, bro.
What was really interesting about it was one of my good friends came up to me as people were starting to trickle back to their seats and everything. And he said, Chris, do you see those 10 people that are sitting out there? He said, as Christians or as conservatives, we're always made to feel like we're the ones that are alone. Now they know what that feels like because everybody came up here. He's like, that was powerful. I was like, holy crap, you're right. Yeah. I didn't even think about it like that. But that was
that was
crazy.
Beautiful, man. Yeah.
It was crazy.
Man. You should be a pastor, man.
That's not the first time I've heard that. And
altar call.
Yeah. Leslie said I've never seen that happen at a funeral. Yeah. I'll be truly honest with you. Yeah. I didn't even know what an altar call was. Yeah. Until she said that's what. Yeah,
that's
is.
what an altar.
But
I mean, if I could say this though, man, that because both my parents are still alive, and I think about that all the time. So, my parents, typical, grew up in church, went to church, but at times, they say and do things that kind of make me question if they are serious about their faith, right? Yeah. And so I think about that all the time. What's gonna happen when that day comes, And like what you're saying to me is you kind of broke down what a Christian was from like through your mom's life, but at the same time you didn't like disregard her silly antics. And that kind of resonated with me because my mom is kind of like the same thing. She's like kind of and so it's making me now look at my parents and just not disregarding them, and still continuing to pray for them, of course.
Absolutely.
But making me look at them as just human, you know, and hoping that someday that they will, you know, I've never heard it, but openly confess Christ and, you know, go from there, you know.
I don't know what I can get from my dad, but here's the good news that I didn't even say yet. This year, there was one weekend that he called me up, and it was Sunday morning, and he's like, "Hey, what time are you going to church?" And sometimes he likes us coming over afterwards and stuff. And I said, "This is what time I'm going." And he's like, "Okay, I'll meet you there." I was like, what? You know, and he has made an effort to come to church. He's calling me right now.
Wow. Wow.
He's made an effort to come to church, and
Will I answer or not?
no, I'm gonna.
Yeah, tell him you're talking about.
I'm talking about it. But he's made an effort to come to church without me asking. Now, sometimes I use my kids to ask him.
Yeah.
Because you can't say no to the grandkids.
You can't.
You know.
You just
So sometimes you gotta use God's gifts.
Yes.
But that makes every single time that I get a phone call from him Saturday night or Sunday morning that he wants to meet us there. We used to go to the 10:30 service, and he is a early riser. The earlier you could get something like that done, the more you have to the rest of the day to get other stuff done. And if that's the sacrifice we need to make is go to the 9 a.m. service, I'm going to the 9 a.m. service then.
Wow.
You know? So if he doesn't say anything, we're going to the 10:30. But that, I mean,
funny.
nothing makes me happier.
Yeah.
And I can't give up on the prayer because I want him to know.
Yeah.
I want him to know Jesus. You know, I want him to be. Here's the thing. What happened to me in that hospital and what happened to my mom on her deathbed was both of us showed that we don't fear death.
Yeah.
My mom was welcoming it. She knew what was on the other side. I don't think even most Christians know what that's like, you know, because I think faith brings you so far, but until you get a miracle that you know that makes it completely unshakable, man, I can't look at things the same way. I really can't.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that because I was hoping you came back to that, like how that happening, you know, you getting cancer, like how that, you know, changed your outlook on life, because exactly what you just said. You know, that's kind of, I mean, I've never had a near-death experience or anything like that, but spiritually I have.
Yeah.
Because spiritually I feel like I literally, coming to Christ for me felt like suicide. Like literally, I tell people that, like, for me, I felt like it hurt to come to Christ. You know what I'm saying? Like it hurt me because I had to throw away a lot. So
you have to admit to things.
Yes. So going through that process and dying, you know, it's, you know, we all know dying of the flesh, but like to me it felt real, like dying. Now I'm not scared of anything because I'm like, when I die physically for real, I'm prepared. And of course I say it, and I don't know, who knows that if it happens one day, who knows if it's going to be a different experience. But mentally, spiritually, I feel like, man, I'm living my best life, and I don't have to be rich right now. I don't have to be it's not about money, you know, but I'm living my best life, man. This is a beautiful life because I'm not fearful. And that's kind of the same thing that happened to you. You're not fearful of life.
No.
Yeah.
And that reminds me in regards to death, what I was talking about in the eulogy of truth is a lot of people like to think that heaven is what they create, right? Heaven is, you know, what's the best way of putting this? Because now I have a hard time of seeing anything but what it should be, you know, which is, you know, maybe someone loves being in the tropics, right? Well, heaven for me is I'm sitting on the beach for the rest of my life. I'm at a tiki bar,
I get that. I get that. Yeah.
And they're seeing like heaven is I'm surrounded by my family members, and no matter what they believed, they're going to be there with me and everything. I'm like, no. I said, no. You know, heaven is. It specifically says in Revelation is us around praising God.
Yep.
Like throwing ourselves at his feet and praising him, you know, and just to be in his presence. There's so many discussions we can have on that stuff, but I mean, like I was trying to lay out truth for people, you know, but yeah, it's just God has really worked in my life, and I'm just so happy that I get like this kind of opportunity, even if it's 10 people that see this or listen to this, just to hear what I've been through, and people have been through so much worse. I've heard such good stories of faith, So, do you want to talk about when you came to Christ?
I guess a little bit. I wouldn't really give the whole thing right now. This is all about you, man.
No. You're here. So.
But I guess what I have to say, I'm thinking about a lot of what we talked about is just life is crazy. And one of the things I talk about, or like to say at least, and it's in my email signature, is life is hard, but God is good. And that's kind of how I see everything. Everything in this world sucks. The pain, the cancer, your dad, your mom, everything kind of sucks and hurts, and we cry and we feel pain and all these things. But at the end of it, even when you don't confess Christ, you're gonna go see Him. And all of this all leads back to God. But fortunately for people like us who have confessed Christ and come to Christ, we get to now see life through that lens. Throughout the pain, throughout the fear, we don't see that, we see through it, and we get to live an amazing life, whether rich or poor, but we get to live an amazing life, and I just think that's awesome, I think that's super cool,
You were asking about like how cancer changed my life and everything. I think in the end it was a blessing. It really was, because I wouldn't have this unshakable faith. Now my mom's sense of humor came through with it, because I ended up on life support. I almost died. I had to have heart surgery, all this stuff while I was in the hospital. Like I was on my way out. And so when I was in the hospital, I gained, let's see, I'll just tell you my weight. I was 230 pounds when I was healthy at the time. I lost 10 pounds after 1 week of not being able to eat before I even knew what was wrong. So I went down to 220. I got into the hospital, and when I was bedridden on life support, I ballooned up in water weight to 260. And then when I got out and started chemo, I went from 260 down to 205.
Shoot.
I looked like death. And all my hair came out and everything, and just... looking back on it now, I think it was hilarious. Because like literally all your hair. Right. I mean, I said I
lost your hair also.
So I talked to my doctor and I said, so my hair's going to fall out with the chemo. Yes. I said, okay, the only thing I care about is my eyebrows. I don't want to look like I'm sick, or my eyebrow's going to fall out. He's like, no, your eyebrows should be fine. Right. I'm sitting there at home one night watching TV with Leslie, and I'm leaning on the couch like this. I just started scratching my eyebrow like this, and I see hair falling.
Oh, man.
I'm like, I look over at Leslie. I said, is my eyebrow still there? She's like, half of it. I'm like, oh. And I just started going like this and got it all gone,
gosh.
But like literally, I'm in the shower shampooing and just clumps of hair coming out, right? And that's really sad at the time and everything. But I made jokes of it. I'm like, I make Michael Phelps jealous. I could dive into one end of the pool and just glide to the other. You know what I mean? I said, I went from 260 pounds down to 205 with a new diet called Slimfoma. And people are like, you can't joke like that. I'm like, the hell I can't. I'm the one that had the cancer. I am gonna joke about that.
Gosh. But it's like when your parent tells you, if somebody calls you like, I don't know, you have big nose in school or something, just own up.
Go with it.
Yep. You can even name me Nose. Call me Nosy or something. But man, life is. Again, life is hard, but God is good. You made something good out of a situation,
Well, tell us your coming to Christ.
My coming to Christ story. So, make it short, I came to America when I was 12. I would say I was a good kid. My parents raised me right. I read a lot. My parents kept me in the house. So when we came to America, my mom, myself, and my brother, one of my brothers, from Jamaica. So we were living with my grandma, and from 12 to 15, we lived with my grandma. My mom finally moved out, got an apartment, we moved out. So I was going to church from like age 12 to 15, going to Seventh-day Adventist church. And funny enough, like my grandma never came to church with us. She was just like, go to church. So my brother and I would walk to church. So when my mom finally got the apartment now, she was like, well, I was like, so do I have to keep going to church? She was like, nope, make up your own decision. So from about 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, till like 22, 23, never stepped foot in the church, right? So for, 7, 8 years, pretty much lived in the world, you know, and I'm Jamaican. If you know anything about the Jamaican life, it's the weed, it's the girls, it's the parties. Weed, girls, parties. And so in high school, you know, I went to it was a pretty good high school, I guess, but it was a high school. So in New York, it was a high school within a high school. So there's like 4 different high schools within a high school. I don't know if they do this out here, but yeah. So
that sounds crazy.
Crazy. So like my height, like I had a corner, like our side of the building was a corner, right? So anyway, so it was a pretty decent school on the 4th floor, but then they had the real school, the main school downstairs. So it was kind of a bad school. I think they even shut it down actually. So I started to mingle and commingle with people that, you know, kids that were, you know, coming to school with like knives and, you know, just terrible kids, you know, not terrible humans, but just doing the wrong things. So, you know, we'd smoke weed, you know, we'd go to parties, you know, next thing you know, in the Bronx, you know, next thing you know, there's gunshots fired, next thing you know, a guy's pulling out a gun, and I'm just there like, I'm supposed to be a good kid, but I'm hanging around these dudes, you know, I'm hanging around these dudes. So I like to tell people, like, I was never a gangster, but I hung around gangsters, you know, it was just, those are my friends, you know. So I kind of got into it, and so for many years I was just smoking weed, having any amount of girlfriends I wanted, not being faithful, getting a girl, breaking up just for sex, and so like around age 19, I broke my ankle, and I lied to my mom for like years that I was playing soccer and I kicked the ball and I slipped, and no, that wasn't the truth. The truth was I was high and drunk with my friends, and my friend he was like kind of fat at the time, and I'm play fighting him, you know, I'm drunk and high and I'm play fighting him, and I pulled him from the back. I pulled him from the back and he fell backwards, and I went but I didn't feel anything, bro. I'm high, I'm drunk. You know, I didn't feel anything. So I'm looking at my leg, I'm like, is it broken? Nah, it's not broken. It's swollen though. It's getting big. It's getting, yeah, you should probably call, I need help, right? So I was bedridden for about 3 months or something. I was just laying down with my foot up. So I was dating a girl at the time who, should I say this on camera? Yeah, I'll say it on camera. She was one of those girls where it was just like, how did you get her? Yeah. You know? And even for me, I'm a ladies' man, but even for me, I'm like, how did I even get this girl, right? This girl was gorgeous, right? And we're 19. So I like to say she was like the best thing and the worst thing that ever happened to me. I had super trust issues, man. Yeah. And it's funny because I was cheating on her, but then I you know, but I didn't trust that she was faithful to me. So it was a toxic relationship. Yep. So while I was home for 3 or 4 months, you know, bedridden, just laying down, smoking weed, I just kind of had a lot of time to think, you know, and that's when I started realizing that I was a horrible person, you know? I started realizing that, Paul, you have sins. You know, I started realizing who I was as a person, and I didn't have answers. You know, I didn't really know what it meant. I started to even question myself, even sexually, and like I didn't even know if I wanted to have sex with my girlfriend anymore. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like I just didn't know. I just, I'm just sitting home, just thinking, you know. And I got kicked out of my house because my mom caught me in bed with the same girl.
With your leg up in the air.
So my leg kind of got better, and yeah, so it was like, so she kicked me. She was like, "You need to leave," and I was living with my aunt for like, I don't know, a year. I went, was living with my aunt, and then I was like, I should move back with my mom. I'm a good kid now, Mom. I should move back home, right? And she's like, yeah, come back home. And got caught again with the same girl, same thing, and got kicked out again. So I was like, all right, maybe I should just live with my aunt. So I lived with my aunt for about 3 years. And now my aunt, she was like free. She was like, do whatever you want. Yeah, you can smoke weed in the house. I'm like, what? Lighten up. Yeah, bring girls over. Sure, do whatever you want. Like, girls could like sleep over for like 3-4 days. She didn't even care, right? So I kind of lived for about 3 years just kind of free, But still, I was battling in myself. Like, I remember when I was 19, a couple of years before, that I just felt like something was up with me. Like, I felt sin. This is my sins convicting me now. And so I started to go on this kind of spiritual journey. So I started to read a bunch of books on yoga and meditation. And I was reading like Zen, books on Zen.
So spirituality stuff.
Just going through that whole like Eastern mysticism thing. Yeah. I was wearing crystals around my body. Like, yes, I grew out my dreads. I was reading books on Rasta for anything. I just needed answers. Yeah. And to be honest, I wouldn't even say I was looking for answers, bro. I just needed to feel better about myself. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So then all of a sudden I became this spiritual guy, and that like even made me more attractive to girls, because girls are just like, oh, he's so sensitive, so inner peace, and I just kept getting into more trouble, Yeah. And it wasn't until my brother, so I guess fast forward, it wasn't until like 2014 my brother moved, one of my younger brothers moved from Jamaica, and he was a Christian. And he was living with me and my aunt, and he noticed. He was just like, okay, this guy's kind of crazy. He's just like all into his spiritual Zen and the universe and all this crazy stuff. And he's a Christian. And at that time, we were making music together, or wanted to make music together, but he came to me one day. He's like, bro, we can't. I'm a Christian. You're on some like other level. Our music it just can't work. And he kind of gave me the talk. He was like, why don't you read the Bible, So this is like 2014, yeah. He's like, why don't you just read the Bible, bro? And I'm like, all right, right? I'm just like, all right, cool. So at the time, I was working at the Statue of Liberty, and so there's the island, there's the island, and there's the statue, the monument. Like there's a post inside the monument. You can sit there. I was giving out like audio tours and stuff like that inside the monument. But no one liked to go inside the monument because you had no cell phone service. So it's just like, oh man, I don't want to go to the monument. But because I was reading the Bible, it was the only time I kind of got to read the Bible. So I was like, yeah, I'll go to the monument. Yeah. I got to sit there and I'd read. There was barely any people that came to the monument at the time. So for that summer in 2014, I'm reading the Bible, and I got through Matthew, I got through Mark, and at the end of Mark, I'm just like, yeah, Jesus is my Lord and Savior. And I confessed. I'm like in the statue and I'm there crying like a baby. So that was my confession. That was how I came to Christ. And it wasn't easy. I still had girlfriends. I was still trying to put the weed away, but I knew I had changed. Like I knew I had changed. Like I even started changing my song lyrics too. I was still cussing and stuff like that, but I was just like, yeah, Jesus, 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 F word. So it was changing, but I still didn't come around fully. So it didn't. So 2014 now summer, went back to school in September into college. I had a best friend in college. We didn't hang out outside of school. It was only in school. So when we went to school, now I'm just like, bro, where are you at, For that whole first week of September, I didn't see him. Either he kept leaving to go do something, leaving class early, or I left class early. So for like a whole week in the beginning of September, we didn't see each other. Until I went to work, Statue of Liberty, I get a phone call that this guy passes away in school. Like at school, had a brain aneurysm, right? and I'm bawling. I walk out, and my manager sees me. He didn't even ask me. He just sees me crying. He's like, go home, bro. You know, and you got to hop on the boat. You got to go take the ferry, go. Mm-hmm. And I remember I got off the ferry and I sat there. This is where they call Bowling Green, downtown Manhattan. And I'm like, okay, I need to find out for sure that my friend passed away, right? So I'm on like Facebook and I see, people are telling me, this guy passed away, and I'm just like, nah, that's not enough for me. Like I need to know. You know, so I'm just like, okay, he has this girlfriend named Rose, you know, and he talks about her all the time. I need to find her. So I'm looking through Facebook, and she was also looking for me at the same time because he's my friend in school. He passed away in school. So she wanted to know if I was there. So long story short, she ends up finding me. We exchange numbers. She calls me. She's like, yeah, he passed away. So. And I remember sitting there. By this time, I'm home. I went home and I'm on the phone with her, and I'm reading. I open the Bible and I get to James 4 verse 14, and it was like life is a vapor, right? And from that moment, I was just like, I need to take the Lord serious now. Because if he died, I always thought of him as this good guy. You know, he had this girlfriend that he was dating since high school, and he's in college now. One girl. I'm like, ooh, one girlfriend. How do you do that, right? Yeah. I'm this jerky guy, you know, I can't even keep a girlfriend, you know. So I'm just, you know, I sat there thinking like, if he died, I'm for sure gonna die, you know, like for sure deserve hell, you know. And so I guess rededicated, you know, that year that, okay, Lord, I know I confessed my sins to you, and I've been kind of walking with you since the summertime. I'm going to take you serious now. And I guess I could share a little bit about who Rose is. I married Rose. She's my wife now. But it was a journey, and even that experience, you know, losing a friend, then finding out that, finding out confirmation that he passed away through his girlfriend, and then becoming friends with her, and then learning the Bible because, you know, I needed to comfort her. Not needed to, but I felt obligated to comfort her, so I'd send her scripture. So now I'm reading scripture for real now, and at the same time, she's reading scripture because I just lost a friend, you know, and she saw me as this kid coming to the Lord now, so she's sending me scripture. So now I had a real tangible reason to believe in the scripture, right, in the Bible. And man, within like a month or so, you know, I'm just like, I like this girl, and I'm like confessing my sins for real now. I'm talking to her, I'm sharing my life with her. I've never done that before. And we're praying and fasting and all these things, and you know, we end up getting married, and I end up getting baptized and all these just great things, you know. And so
it's the other thing that's amazing too is I've had some tough times. You know what I mean? I've been through some crap. All that while, I know that people have been through a hell of a lot worse. You know, and I don't compare myself to anyone. Like, everyone has their own struggles, but I truly feel like having God in my life has, I don't have as hard times, you know? And it's like, it's been super hard without my mom. Like, I just want to pick up the phone and I want to call her, you know what I mean? But I am okay knowing where she is, you know?
Of course.
And I want to see that for as many people as I love as possible, you know? So, so I appreciate you sitting down and listening to my stuff. My stories, you know?
It was beautiful, man. It was beautiful, man.
You want to give your information again as far as like Instagram? You're just starting that up, it seems like, so.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, I'm on Instagram mostly. That's the main place I'm on. Don't really use Twitter or YouTube as much. So Instagram, Yannick Paul is where you can find like my music and sometimes poetry, sometimes me acting crazy. But in hopefully the next couple of days or weeks, I'll be doing my podcast where I'll be doing apologetics. You know, so Caribbean, Carib, Ibberean. And yeah, man, I just appreciate learning about who you are as a person, you know, and just all of this. Just appreciate that, man.
I appreciate you sitting with me.
Yeah, bro.
Well, listen, we have some really interesting interviews coming up. I have a business owner that didn't shut down during the shutdown that I plan on interviewing. We have David and Aaron Bradford that will be interviewed this month, that are both descendants of William Bradford, for that miniseries project I was talking about. And I think I have a couple other ones lined up as well. It's been really exciting. There was a little bit of a break this past week and everything for the interviews, but we're getting back on track with more episodes coming out. And I just want to let you know that things are all over the place. Things have been tossed around. If you don't know already, the interview with Lucy Brenton, which was the last one that I put out, the follow-up interview to the one that was banned, got banned within 24 hours this time. So it's just been a wild ride with YouTube. I don't trust them anymore. I believe that they're the ones that are putting out the misinformation and breaking their own guidelines, and not me. I think that everything we talked about in those interviews are backed up by scientific articles that we read them on, you know? So it's taken a little bit for me. I've done some investigating and everything. I did try uploading a couple videos last year to Rumble and felt that it didn't go fast enough. But at this point, I'm making sure that everything is backed up to the Rumble account. So what I want you to do is find me on Rumble and go there and take a look at it. And you can see all the videos there. I'll be able to get paid through that, and I will be monetized, unlike YouTube, who demonetized me. I want you to go to Anchor.fm. Especially if you're a podcaster, and I hope he starts using that as a tool to kind of syndicate everything out there. But what's really neat about Anchor FM is it's a Spotify website or app, and you can follow my podcast there. You could go to Apple Podcasts, anywhere that's distributed to. But there's two buttons on there. There's one where you can donate if you feel open to, for helping me to keep this thing going. But there's also a voice message button as well. So if you ever listen to any of these podcasts, no matter who the guest is or what the topic is, and you want to have some say in it and leave a message, as long as it's completely appropriate, I will add that into the episode. I can actually drag and drop things onto episodes that were already done, and then it will just update that episode. It is such a cool tool to use. So if you have anything that you want to say, or you have a comment, I would love to hear what it is. Comment on any of those podcasts and just leave a voice message. And maybe one of these episodes, I'll sit down and play a bunch of voice messages and respond to them, whether they're questions or anything else. So I think that's a really neat feature. So what I want you to do, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Rumble, subscribe to any of the audio podcast platforms that you listen to, whether it's Apple, Google, Spotify, any of those. You can find Whiskey Tango Life Podcast on all of those. You can find me on Twitter at Whiskey Tango Life. You just look for Whiskey Tango Life, you'll find me on there. And I especially want you to follow me on Facebook as well, because I post a lot of articles that are more politically centric and everything, but there's a lot of stuff happening in the world right now that I think is really important, that kind of lend credence to everything that we actually talk about. So I appreciate you guys joining me. I appreciate all the time that you dedicate to me and my guests. Have a great night, and God bless America.